viewers. You are welcome to the program Nigeria Decides 2023 Issues and Voices. This is a program that is sponsored by the National Working Group on Democracy and Good Governance, together with the United States Institute of Peace. The National Working Group is a civil society organization in which a number of prominent Nigerians, including the Sultan of Sokoto, Cardinal John Onaikan, Dr. Usman Bugaje, Professor Atairu Jega, and others work towards the development of good governance in our society. Today, our focus is on the very difficult question of what Nigerians need to do in making their decision on choosing who to vote for. It is a very difficult question sometimes, especially because civil society and a lot of informed opinions are telling Nigerian voters that don't vote on the basis of identity politics, religion, ethnicity, region. Vote on the basis of the quality of the candidates that are presented to you. What then are those qualities that Nigerians should be looking for? We have a formidable panel to discuss this very important issue. It's a civil society panel composed of Anne Iyonu, Executive Director of the Goodluck Jonathan Foundation, Salahuddin of the Clean Foundation, and Dengefa of the Center for Democracy and Development, an organization I'm sure all of you have heard about. This is just showing my partiality. I will first start by asking the panelists to speak for just 1 minute on the work their organizations do on elections. Anne, let me start with you.
Thank you. Good afternoon or greetings, Nigerians. So for us at the Goodluck Jonathan Foundation, we work across several thematic areas to deepen democracy and to advance the integrity of our democratic process. And specifically in Nigeria, we have a forum we call the West African Elders Forum, which they play a mediatory role. You would agree that most of the issues we have on the continent, especially in the sub-region, are post-electoral issues. If you look at the coup in Mali, it started off as civil disobedience for people by citizens against the overturned legislative results. And that led to a coup. So you look at Guinea, you also see where Alpha Condé, the former president, manipulated the constitution to go for a third term. So these issues are post-electoral issues that we have. And so for us at the foundation, we have a group
Yes.
Salahuddin.
Okay. So let's start with our panel. I will start with you, Anne, if you can tell us what work on democracy and elections your organization does.
Thank you, sir. So for us at the Goodluck Jonathan Foundation, the work we do cuts across not just the sub-region, but the continent. We work on programs that advance our democracy and protect the integrity of the democratic process. For specifically in Nigeria, we have a forum called the West African Elders Forum, which their role is to provide some sort of interlocutory and excuse me. Conflict resolution support services. It's a forum made up of former heads of states and government who, having attained high level in office in both their home countries and internationally, have developed non-partisan skills that can help diffuse tensions. Because you find out that, like I was saying, most of the issues we have in the sub-region are post-electoral issues. And so we don't want it to wait for issues to degenerate into an open conflict. Rather, we de-escalate things before it becomes an open conflict. So the elders, it was carried out in the Gambia. We first tested this initiative in the Gambia, the last elections in 2021, and it was successful. We were able to successfully mediate the Gambian elections. And so we're coming to Nigeria again to do the same thing, hoping that whatever disputes may arise from our elections, the elders will be on ground to de-escalate it and it doesn't degenerate into an open conflict.
Thank you, and of course we are all in this country very grateful to President Goodluck Jonathan for the good example he showed during the 2015 elections, where he accepted the verdict of the people without argument, and that in a way played a huge role in consolidating Nigerian democracy. So please tell President Goodluck Jonathan we are always very grateful to him.
Absolutely.
Salahuddin, Clean Foundation.
Thank you very much, Prof. For us at the foundation, what we do basically is to look at the integrity of the election from the point of view of security, and of course looking at the conduct of security agencies in the elections. And we know too well that in the build-up to the elections, there are usually some level of violence that brews before, during, and after the elections. So what Clean Foundation does currently is to do what we call the security threat assessment, which we have done across all 774 local governments across the country. And of course, that report has been collated. We use primary data, open source, where we have actually requested most of our local coordinators to actually do all of those assessments. We put them into various infographics, we disseminate. As a matter of fact, this week we will be issuing the first statement regarding that particular elections. And of course, we will also have the Election Security Support Center, which is going to be a center to coordinate and consistently monitor conduct of security personnel in the field regarding the elections. And of course, what are those threats? How can we mitigate them? What are the response mechanisms? And what are the kind of mitigation that can come in? And that also helps us in terms of how we do policy engagement and of course policy advocacy to stakeholders at different levels. So these are some of the broad spectrum, engaging civil society on the one side, and of course the media and the state actors, those who are directly involved in the political process, to also understand very strongly the need to understand those threats, how to mitigate them, and also, of course keep them at a very low end.
Thank you very much. Dangefa, Center for Democracy and Development.
Well, thank you so much. Well, the Center for Democracy and Development is a leading think tank in West Africa that deals with research and advocacy on issues of democracy and then development. So the center does quite a lot of things, but I'm going to I'll just stick to our plans for the 2023 elections. So for the 2023 elections, we are deploying observers, over 4,000 observers to different polling units in Nigeria. We have a war room. So the war room is meant to fight misinformation and disinformation, because we've seen that the space has been populated with lots of of fake news, disinformation, and misinformation. And and we believe that misinformation and disinformation is one recipe for conflict. So we have a war room that that actively checks from the campaign promises to what the spokesperson say online and then in person to deal with issues of disinformation. That is just on the one hand. And then we have what we call the CDD EAC. So that is the CDD Election Analysis Center. So these are experts that that deal with different thematic areas in the elections, So beyond that, we also have different programs, and then different research outputs. We brought out what we call a SWOT analysis, so strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats analysis, of the elections, looking at the security factors, ethnic factors, different factors that can possibly threaten the elections. So that is already out. We also have what we call changing the guard, looking at the emergence of the third force, and then looking at the old order and the new order that has come up, the generational contestation that we have. So we have, we just brought out a very nice research report called Changing the Guard. Beyond that, we also have reports on social media engagement, women participation in conflict in elections and all of that. So we are doing quite a whole lot that I might not be able to even cover here. Just a whole lot. Strengthening, giving support to the election management body. In terms of crisis communication, just a whole lot. Engaging journalists on peace messaging. Just a whole lot that will strengthen the democratic process in the country, and we hope that we are going to have an election that is peaceful and credible.
Thank you very clearly. The Center for Democracy and Development, CLEAN Foundation, and Goodluck Jonathan Foundation are doing a lot of very positive work in ensuring that the elections are free, fair, peaceful, and lead to a transition that would deepen Nigeria's democracy. To come to our theme, which is how do people choose who they vote for, the Constitution describes in some detail the types of people who shouldn't or who are not allowed to contest for elections. These include people who have been found to be corrupt by tribunals or courts, people who are lunatics, people of unsound mind, people who have been declared to be financially bankrupt, and all those. These are the negative things that prevent you being able to present yourself as a candidate for the elections. In terms of what you need to have to contest, I think there are two basic criteria set out in the Constitution. One is that you are a member of a political party, and that party has put you up to contest for elections. And the other is that you have been to school and you have school certificate. I wondered what school certificate was, so I checked the interpretation section of the Constitution and essentially got surprised by how widely school certificate is defined. First, it says you've completed secondary school and you have the certificate. Secondly, it says if you don't have that you've gone to primary school. Thirdly, it says apparently if you've been to neither secondary school nor primary school, that you've been to some courses that would be the equivalent of schooling. And the final criteria is that INEC thinks you are sufficiently literate to contest for elections. So the Constitution is actually extremely generous in terms of what your qualifications are. That essentially INEC thinks you are literate and you've been put up by your party. But you are civil society activists, and in a lot of your information drive, in a lot of your advocacy, you've been telling voters that it's important in this election they choose candidates with appropriate qualities for governance. Anne, let's start with you. What are those appropriate qualities?
Thank you, sir. So first and foremost, looking at the state of the country as it is today, before I answer that question, you will discover that Nigeria is currently polarized. There's also distrust from government against the government. We lack social cohesion and national identity. What are the criteria? It will be looking at somebody who would feel these issues that we have right now. Somebody who is pan-Nigeria. Somebody who would foster a sense of inclusion that we can achieve that social cohesion that we're looking for. A candidate who will not set us against each other, whether along ethnic lines, religious lines, that would, instead of separating us, will unite us instead of dividing us further. So for me, those are the qualities when we're engaging with people, we ask them to look for. Because you're looking for a leader that would remedy or rectify some of the issues and the challenges we have in the country at the moment. So look for candidates that fit that profile.
Salahuddin.
Thank you very much, Prof. Across the spectrum of political governance, to select, the first thing you must look out for is a candidate that is not carrying baggages. One, because of the prebendal nature that we have in the society, we have a wide range of individuals who have, over the years, feasted on our economy. And of course have actually, so we need somebody who has demonstrated through track records that is verifiable, that they indeed have, one, passion for national development, and two, that they are unifiers. And just like Anne had rightly mentioned, we live in a plural society. And for somebody who will be able to stabilize what we currently have, you must have somebody who has that etiquette and that cohesion and ability to drive that particular kind of unification that we need as a country. But most importantly, we need somebody who also has that experience, very wealth of experience to be able to ensure that the infrastructure that we require for national development, he understands them socially, economically, politically, and of course be able to ensure that he has that infrastructure to be able to rebuild. But finally also is the fact that we need somebody who truly has that identity of ownership of the country. And that I have said very clearly and carefully with every sense of circumspect, because a lot of people that are currently putting themselves forward in the country sometimes have dual nationality. Okay, so if there is any situation, they are easily transited, they move on, but somebody who really has given his all and is willing to do so just in the event of ensuring that we don't have people with honor anymore as a country, so we need to be able to find that missing word in an individual who will be able to take the country forward.
Dangefa, what's your own view?
Yeah. So thank you so much. And so really for me, I think we need a candidate with knowledge, and of course this is not new. So I'm going to be borrowing from some of our very ancient philosophers. Plato said, "Justice is when everyone does what is best suited for." And what he basically meant by that was that there are three groups of people in society. You have the artisans, you have the auxiliaries, and then you have the philosopher kings. And then if you look at the various natures of those people, the artisans are very appetitive, and then you have the auxiliaries that are very courageous. They are pulled by strength, and then you have the philosopher kings that are very knowledgeable, so they are overtly knowledgeable. So for him, a society that is well governed is one that the philosopher king rules, so he controls the appetitive nature of artisan class. It controls the overtly courageous nature of the auxiliary class. Now, so if you bring this to the context of Nigeria, so you realize that in the military era, you can describe the kind of leadership we've had as basically as the auxiliary kind of leadership. Then, of course, we transited to democracy in 1999, and what we've had is basically the appetitive kind of leadership. So they want to produce, they want to get what they can get at the extreme, right? At the extreme. So they don't even understand that, I mean, destroying Nigeria also means destroying themselves. You know, you have to go to a very high level of knowledge to realize the fact that what you do in Nigeria must survive before you survive. So that kind of knowledge. So I want to see really someone that has that high level of knowledge of the highest good. And I think really that is what we need in Nigeria. So I hear a lot of people say we've discussed the problems enough, and then we don't really, you know, discussing the problem is not the issue, we need the solution. But I tell people really, if you have knowledge about a sick person, it is not the same level of knowledge a medical doctor has. So for example, you know you are sick, but a medical doctor will tell you the level of sickness. I mean, it will also possibly tell you, I mean, how many days that sickness will take before it deteriorates or you possibly get ill. That level of knowledge. So for example, beyond the blanket statements that we make that, okay, fine, in the Northeast we have ISWAP and Boko Haram, in the Northwest we have banditry, in the Southeast we have the IPOB, and then we have criminalities and piracy in the South. We want someone that will bring local nuances, that will even understand the specific needs, ethnographic analysis of these various conflict situations. We want somebody that understands, you know, the Nigerian state really, not some blanket statement that I will do this, I will do that. We want somebody that has knowledge of the Nigerian state. Because I really think that's where it begins from, because really, I don't really feel that some of the leaders that we've gotten really understands the critical situations that we are, the debt burden that we are, the inflation rate that we have, and the possible implication of this for this country. So I don't really feel they really have. And then the second really is about personalities over political parties. So I mean, so if you are telling me you will do this and then you do that, the easiest way, if I don't understand it properly, the easiest way for me to check is to look at your track record. So let us begin to look at the track records of these people. I mean, if we want to employ somebody in an organization, maybe an organization that just that is like 10 people and all of that, we do a background check. Sometimes we also consult to people to say, okay, do a background check for me for this person. But we are talking about the #1 citizens of this country, you know, and then we don't do a lot of background checks on this people. And even if it comes, we begin to argue about, you know, begin to swing aside some of the corrupt things that we hear and all of that. We should discuss them, because really, this person is the #1 person. And I mean, if you are in a bus, you as a passenger is important. But I mean, if you're not on the driver's seat, you are helpless really. And these people are vying to be on the driver's seat of this country. So we should look at personalities, look at the educational qualification, look at their integrity. We should discuss their personality, because if you look at the behavioral school, really, you will see that an individual comes to governance with his behavior, and his behavior influences the institution. So when we say strong institution, we are also referring to very strong individuals, because strong individuals, the character of strong individuals make strong institutions. Lastly, it's about their manifesto. So what I've seen in this election really is about manifestos that do not have metrics. So they will tell you, for example, we will reduce poverty, don't worry. We will bring Nigeria from consumption to production. We will restructure Nigeria. And I ask when? What are you going to achieve in the first 6 months? So that I can hold you accountable if you don't. What are you going to achieve in the next 1 year? So that I can hold you accountable if you don't. So that measurement metrics is not this. I want Nigerians, especially the youths, beyond just chanting the rhetorics on Facebook and on Twitter and social media generally, compare the manifestos of these leading candidates to say, okay, what has he got for us? How can we even hold them accountable? In the next 3 months, what can we even say to know that he is on track beyond the very blanket statements that we make? So I really want to see someone with knowledge, someone with a very good personality, and someone whose manifesto has measurable metrics that we can hold to account.
Thank you. I like the general arguments the three of you are making, that first and foremost, let's look for somebody who can build Nigeria, who can promote national unity, who can make Nigeria a cohesive nation. I think these are important considerations. And I like the idea, Dangefa, you raised of a background check. So let's take a number of issues for our background check. You recall civil society took a leadership position in arguing that the youth are not too young to run for office. And they were successful in reducing the age for contesting for public office in Nigeria. But there has not been a debate on the flip side of this. Are some people too old to run for office? Salahuddin, let's start with you. Do you think there should be an upper age limit in contesting for office?
Absolutely, sir. I think that would help in terms of regulating the kinds of individual that drive the country forward. And to be very honest, you cannot bring analog experience into a digital community. Times have changed, generations have moved, and we need to be able to move with the trends across the globe. I had the opportunity to sit in a regional negotiating table for a multilateral conversation, and I saw a 21 years old lady negotiating for the entire Asia. And I said to myself, the entire delegation from Nigeria were actually civil servant, directorate level, permanent secretary, old and a Caribbean. And of course, at that time, when you bring specific agenda to the table, the analysis was poor, the positioning was not rife, the angle of perspective seemed to be entirely analog. And of course, you see a digital age, young people with very clear knowledge, with modern ideas of how they can actually try turn around the system, the economy, and that also was providing me with a new thinking. And to be very honest, if you are actually going to be moving in that trend, we need to begin to understand that, look, there's a need for us to put a peg as to the age limit of people who can actually drive the country forward.
Where
Otherwise,
will you place the peg?
I will put it at 60, to be honest, and that is because at that age, you are still very mobile, you still have a very sound mind, and of course, it can be in concurrence with what the Constitution had said. And I think the issue is this.
Sorry, 60, if you are above 60, you can't contest.
You shouldn't contest, as a matter of fact. You shouldn't contest. The Constitution didn't envisage that a day will come in our national life that we will have individuals like this who would actually be struggling and contesting for powers. And maybe that was why in your opening statement, you alluded to that background check that you did. And we realized that the Constitution was very generous. The Constitution was actually very fair. Maybe the founding fathers felt very clearly that there were going to be people who were saying, in terms of actually driving the affairs of the country, genuinely and interested moving forward. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. So I would say that 60 should be the limit to which people should not go beyond to vote for contest for public offices.
Okay, Anne.
It's interesting you should ask that question because I had thought about it earlier, the upper age limit thing. Riding on what Salahuddin has said, I'm a bit undecided. I agree there should be an upper age limit, but I would prefer that you put it at 70 because you have some very sound minds who even at 60-something, 70 are doing extraordinary things. And I also want to, the fact that we are preaching discrimination, non-discrimination, we shouldn't discriminate the elderly from contributing their own quota to society. There are certain things an elder sits, whether we like it or not, they have knowledge about. There are certain things they have experienced, that they have more knowledge that we could learn from. So yes, I agree with the upper age limit, but let's peg it at 70.
Okay.
So just riding on what Hannah said, very, very, very interesting. Well, I will just start off with the fact that I have seen very young persons that, that ruled and then ruled very badly. I've seen very old persons that ruled and then ruled very well. So for me, the argument is really contextual and based on capacity. So I would rather say let us discuss in terms of being healthy and being mentally fit. So I mean, say if you're 70 and then
no, we'll come to those, but now is age.
Okay, so really, I don't think that there should be a age limit, but of course, if there should be, I will keep that at 75 because I mean, so the argument will now be that. I mean, even professors at some point retire. Yeah, professors at some point retire. So yeah, I'll keep it at 75.
Okay,
Yeah.
so on age, we feel there should be an age limit, but that should range from 60 to 70 to 75. Viewers, we'll take a short break. We'll be right back.
Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
Welcome back. Welcome back, viewers. We are considering today what are the qualities voters should be looking for when they decide who they want to vote for in the forthcoming elections. We've raised issues about what the constitutional provisions dictate, and we have looked at what other qualities are necessary, and one of those qualities we've looked at is age. Should that be a factor? I don't think we have a perfect agreement on that, but people feel, our panel feels, that yes, we should think about that, and maybe the range 60 to 75, which is a very broad range, should be where we should be looking at. The next issue I want to ask my panelists is the question of health. Health has become a major issue already in this campaign, especially in the social media, but also in the traditional media. You will see a lot of affirmations and allegations that some people are too unhealthy to be occupants of political office. And what's your view on this?
Thank you for the question. When you were reading the criteria for eligibility for presidency earlier on, I'm sure you mentioned something about sound mind.
Yes, it's in the Constitution.
So when we begin to look at the issue of health, I would like that we separate it into two parts, which is one, mentally, and then physically. Let's deal with the physical health first. For you to be president, you need some sort of agility to be able to not just move from one place to the other, but to be able to drive some of the processes or some of the campaign's promises you had made. Because you need to be able to push it and see it through fruition. And then you talk about the mental capacity. If the Constitution also says you mustn't be a lunatic. I'm not saying any of the candidates are mad or in a state of lunacy, but you must have the right mental capacity to be able to understand what the issues are, to be able to engage with the people, to be able to take rational decisions, not decisions that you're being forced to take because you don't have the mental capacity to do so. So health is very, very important. Whether you're elderly, whether you're young, you need...
What? these people are really. I think it's your mic.
Your
again.
mic.
I didn't lean back.
Thank God it's recording. They will come and they will edit those videos.
Are they coming? Salah, do you want to check?
Okay.
They'll come.
I mean, I
No,
won't
no,
be
let
able to
them
tell-
come. Let them
I
come.
won't be able to know if it's on or not. Okay.
Why
Okay.
don't you just give her the physical mic?
Does it work? Yeah. So you want to double it?
Oh.
You sure it's not the battery of that?
Is it off again?
Okay. Okay, so we should start from the question. Okay. You'll do countdown? I can't hear you yet. Oh, she should speak. Okay, speak up.
Hi.
Did you hear her? Speak.
Hello.
Again.
Hi.
Hello. Check.
Hi.
Hello. Check. Check.
Mic check.
Check.
Mic
Check.
check. 1, 2. 1, 2. Mic check.
Is that all right? No. Ah.
Mic check. 1, 2, 1, 2.
I think there's a problem. They are not hearing you well.
You know, your voice is so soft. Maybe the guy at the end.
No,
The guy
that's
is
not
sleeping.
it. It's just marginalization of women. They are giving her the bad mic.
Maybe the guy's ear, this is so soft in his ears that he wants you to keep talking so that he doesn't want this session to finish.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they have brought the experts. Okay, you are the director. Yeah. People have seen a fine lady in your office today. You are pretending the mic is not working. Everybody just want to come and touch her hand today. Ah. Wow.
Mic check. Mic check.
Check the microphone.
We good?
Is that fine? Are you happy? He answers, so it's right. Today now,
Mic check.
okay, it's on now.
Mic check.
He can hear you.
It's even two they put for you.
Director, how many minutes do we have now? I've lost count. How many minutes do we have left? I've lost count. 8 minutes. Only 8. Sorry, you. Okay, that's fine. 28 minutes. Okay. We're halfway through. That's good. Okay. Stand by. So, Anne, what do you think should voters think about health status of candidates? Should that be a factor in their consideration of who to vote for?
Very importantly so. I think voters should consider health as a very critical factor in determining who they vote at the next elections. And when we're talking about health, I'd like us to break it down into two components, which is the physical health and the mental health. Both are very important. It's not enough for you to be physically fit or to be agile. You also have to have the mental capacity to be able to take certain decisions and to understand the rigor, or to, for lack of a better word, to fully utilize the rigors of that office. Because being the #1 citizen of this country is not a walk in the park. It's not something you wake up in the morning and you think is business as usual. It requires extensive and rigorous mental calculations on what policies will best work for your people, how do we see our electoral promises to the very end. So yes, when deciding whoever voters would at the poll, I would suggest that they take into consideration both the physical health and the mental health. Thank you.
Thank you, and Salahuddin, what's your view on health?
Thank you very much, Prof. I agree completely that you need to also find that aggregate within which to determine. I know too well that even politicians know that Nigerians expect that component of certification. And of course, that is why they try to make a caricature of it, even whilst declaring. I know that when Rotimi Amechi was going to declare, he did that in the stadium, and of course had to run around just to communicate to Nigerians that look, in the build-up to the primaries, that look, I am very physically fit, just in case communicating to delegates, so choose me over any other person. And I have seen that played out. Even the candidate of the APC trying to walk on a treadmill, trying to also, that video came out, and of course communicating that look, against the perception that I am not doing well, see me trying to also do all of this. But of course, the issue is very important. Like you have rightly mentioned earlier, that the issue of certification, both for academic and of course health, must have been undertaken. And you know too well how all of this certification also happen. At different times in our lives, even at workplace, they have requested us to bring some sort of physical fitness certificates, which we produce. And these things are procured generally in the market today. So that is not a determinant to suggest that. But yes, to be physically fit is fundamental. But of course, it has become one of the ways that the commercialization and politicization of it has happened. But what is most important is the stability of the mind, mental health. That for me is the fulcrum, and that is the center of gravity. I mean, we have seen a president in the US once, after the Second World War, he was on the wheelchair and of course brought the US out of recession. Even the 20-year-old boy today is not entirely physically fit because of the societal threats that we have and all the threats that are associated with it. But what is most important is the stability and the mental health that every participant in this runoff must have in this entire process is very germane. And that, for me, should be the concentration. But yes, citizens must choose, and they must choose somebody who is healthy.
Yeah, so thank you very much. So I think this is just one point that we all are going to agree on. Yes, so I think health is really, really important. So if you look at Nigeria, I mean, Nigeria is the most populous black nation on earth. I mean, beyond that, it's a very complex country with multi-dimensional issues. So I can imagine it being the president of Nigeria, and then you have to read the daily paper maybe by night, and then in the morning, the Nigeria Delta people are calling you for flooding, and then all of the issues in the northwest, northeast. It is really overwhelming, and you need someone really that is very mobile. So, but also, health issues are in a continuum. So you have, of course, the healthy. You can be more healthy and be very, very healthy. So I think that really it is looking at what specific issue, the specific health issue that you might possibly have. If it's something that can affect your mobility to an extent, or even affect issues of governance, I mean, it is something we need to consider, especially because, I mean, we've had a taste of this kind of issue before. I mean, so we had the Yaradua issue, and then we all know how this country was almost pushed to a tipping point when unfortunately we lost Yaradua, and then Goodluck Jonathan was supposed to come in, and then there was no provision for that. We had to use the doctrine of necessity and all of those stuff. It was something that many people predicted that Nigeria would. I mean, that it would be a tipping point for Nigeria. So it is something we don't want to keep experimenting with, especially because of the fragile nature of the country. We are divided along different ethnic fault lines and all of that. So it is not something we want to keep experimenting. I think health issues are really, really, really important. In this election, we have about 48 million voters that are youths. I mean, so if you want to deal with the youth, somehow, there is actually a generational gap. If you are too above them, they tend to listen to you, and that is why maybe some candidates appeal more to the youth, because they feel they are more younger and they can understand, understand, some of the differences that they have, and it's also about issues of health. So really, I think health is really, really important, and it is what we should consider, and we should consider it really, 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 really deeply, especially because Nigeria is one country that is really multidimensional and needs a very mobile president.
Yeah, so I think we are all agreed health is an important issue. You need to be fairly healthy to rule a large, complex country such as Nigeria. But of course, health is something that you can't always determine. You can be elected perfectly healthy, yeah, and the day after your inauguration you fall sick, yeah, because we are not always in total control of what happens to our health. But I think the key point that all the three of you have raised is that people should consider how healthy or unhealthy a candidate is when making their decisions on whether or not they want to vote for that candidate. The next issue I want to place on the table, and this time I'll start with you, Danjeffer, is the whole question of educational qualification. Is it really useful to be highly educated as a condition to be able to govern? As I've said at the beginning of this program, the Constitution is very generous in terms of educational qualification, and basically the real criteria it sets out is that somebody should be literate in the consideration of INEC, because it turns out school certificate doesn't actually mean school certificate. What's your view? Is it necessary for somebody to have a high educational qualification to be voted for? And if so, what level?
Well, I think necessary is actually an understatement. I think it should actually be a must. Now, starting off with what John Locke said, man is born tabula rasa. So whatever you gain in society is either gained from formal education or informal education, or particularly from your environment. So I will assume that nobody comes to this world with an innate knowledge. You gain whatever you want to gain from the schooling system or from the environment. So it also means that the level of your schooling, and then the quality of the institution determines, builds you to the perfect whole human being that you become. If that is then true, you will realize that someone that finishes a primary school is expected that you have a better value system because education is both in character and then in learning. So you have a very good background in learning, and you also have a very good background in value system. Someone that finishes secondary school is expected to be higher in terms of values and then in learning. And then if you finish the university system, you're expected to be better. So really, I think in many places, really, if you have a PhD, for example, you are a preferred candidate because they feel that you've undertaken rigorous studies after several years, so they feel you are better mentally fit to organize that particular organization. You are better mentally fit to look at the complex situations. You're better mentally fit, to discuss complicated international issues, perhaps like climate change and all of the intricacies that concern those very complex issues. But I really wonder when it comes to governance of the highest office. We can now say certificate, and even if you don't have, INEC can possibly determine that you are eligible based on they can say they find your level of knowledge adequate enough to become the president of Nigeria, and that INEC also is it's made up of individuals that may be subjective. So I really think that the highest office should at least be from someone that has perhaps a BSc, HND, at least should have an undergraduate because I believe in most disciplines, maybe you want to study political science, you want to study law. For most disciplines, even for most employment criteria, it is for undergraduates. So I really believe that we need to push up that a little and then make sure that the people that govern us, beyond just saying they have experience, they should have at least a BSc, HND, at least have a university degree, that will enable them, discuss issues of foreign importance. So I can imagine that we have our president in different forums, and then they are bringing complicated issues. He does not even understand, because perhaps what the kind of knowledge he has is the basic knowledge, and then you are competing against people that have very sophisticated level of education. That is a lose-lose for us. So I think we need to have somebody that that at the minimum has a university degree.
Thank you, Salahuddin.
Absolutely, sir. I think that would be the minimum, which I agree, and that is because for you to be able to decide constructively, you must be able to be knowledgeable, and that we established at the beginning of this event. For you to be able to interpret constructively, unbiased, you need to be able to take the situation into an arena where you can actually provide that ambience of a very clear and meticulous analysis. For you to be able to analyze a situation properly, you need that level of knowledge. So I think it is actually a transition that we have, that we must actually establish. And that is because to rule and become a president of this country, you are going to be interfacing with global leaders. You are going to be taking some kind of decisions that is actually beyond some kind of spectrum from where you are coming from. So it is very important that even beyond learning, that some level of experience also must come. But because we are actually concentrating on education, it offers that individual an opportunity to be able to dissect information, look at it holistically, and be able to remove any form of prism. Because sometimes it is about prism from where you look at an issue from. But when you have that dynamic mind that interprets and, of course, provide that oscillation, then, of course, you can come up with the best kind of judgment. One of the biggest embarrassments that we had and that we have faced in the last few years is because of the kind of global GAFE that we have seen actually playing out. And that, of course, we have been able to trace to the fact that, yes, there was some kind of modesty in how we selected our leaders. So for us to be able to continue to represent and stand in the Committee of Nations and be able to speak in such a way and manner that people will respect Nigeria as the biggest nation with the largest number of black race, we must be able to put forward leaders who are knowledgeable, who are very forward-looking, who have the foresight and can compete constructively. One single decision Singapore made some years ago, it transformed the entire country. One single decision Malaysia, Brazil made, and of course they saw what today we have made decisions over and over again that has created inconsistencies, somersault, and that has receded us backward. And that is the reason why we need somebody who is forward-looking.
Okay, thank you. Anne, what's your own view?
I think we're all in agreement that a university degree or HND should be the basic minimum. But I would also want to point out that it's not about education as in formal education alone. There should be some sorts of self-development. It's not enough for you 5 years, 10 years, you've graduated from university, you haven't gone ahead to develop yourself. You also need to learn some basic things, some life skills, just show that the process that you're constantly developing yourself because the times are changing. The only thing constant in life is change. The world also changes, it's dynamic, so you also have to adapt and change. So if there's something new, you learn it. So we are all in agreement. Like Salahuddin has said, I can't overflog the issue. You need somebody who has, who is in the know of what is going on so that you avoid some of the embarrassing situations that we have found ourselves on the global stage. So yeah, a basic qualification will be the university degree, but also self-development.
So my panel believes you need to have been to a university or to a polytechnic and have your certificate as one of the conditions to be able to properly understand how to govern a country and proceed from that point. Of course, some people have argued in the past that you can be very knowledgeable without going through the walls of a university.
True.
And it's maybe because of that, the Constitution framers were a bit loose in the way they defined it. I definitely remember during one of the constitutional debates, Alhaji Tanko Yakase, who is one of our senior politicians from Kano, is 94 years old today, I think, who is very articulate and has always made the point he's never entered a classroom in his life. He was a tailor apprentice when Aminu Kano picked him up, and he actually taught him to read and write. In that sense, therefore, he's been to school in the sense that somebody did sit down and teach him to read and write. But my next question has to do with, are there other skills you need for governance? For example, some people argue that if you've never worked in government, you've been in the private sector all your life, you shouldn't be elected into office because you don't know how government works. Others will argue exactly the opposite, that, well, people in government are used to bad habits. The private sector, for example, has a lot of very useful skills that when applied to governance could carry the nation forward. So my question now is, I'll start with you, Anne. What are the other governance skills people need to have to perform well in government?
Thank you for that question. It's a very important question. Riding on what you said earlier, the people have argued that if you've worked in the private sector, you can't work in governance because you don't know the issues. I would rather say that what you've done, like we mentioned in the past, your track record should be a criteria, be it public sector, be it private sector, that you have worked in the past. Your track record should be one of the bases which we select you. And beyond governance, really, what are the issues involved in governance? I would honestly, if you ask me, I would say empathy. I would also say knowing and understanding the job. I would say selflessness. For you to be a leader, you must first of all be a follower. You are not there to go and lord it over anybody. You're there to serve. So you must have the spirit of servitude. You must serve. It's not about, and whoever is going to be there has to be selfless. So what are the issues really about governance? Is you knowing that I am holding public trust, a public office. I'm holding the public trust on behalf of the people, and that whatever I do is for the benefit of the people. I think when you have such guidelines or things that guide you, you're able to govern properly. It's not about, it's not an educational requirement per se, in the sense that it's not about the skills that you would have. It's about the person. Integrity, empathy, selflessness. Maybe you help me out when you're saying your own. But all I'm saying is, for me, I don't think it's about knowing where to plug this or knowing this policy or knowing.
It's not just in nuts and bolts.
Yeah.
Yes, it's not exactly. So it's about what makes you the individual that helps you to deliver on the job that you have taken.
Okay, we just have a minute left, so quickly, Salahuddin.
Okay, I will take the issue of time management. One of the biggest things that has set us back is because we don't have respect for time. Delegation is one, ability to delegate. These are some of the things that have made private sector quite very robust, and of course, they know too well that if you don't achieve anything within 365 days, that you are likely going to lose and you are not going to make profit. So they know that time is very of essence. And so that is very important. And bureaucracy has been one of the biggest challenge that has killed us as a country. Ability to delegate, monitoring capacity, that when you delegate individuals, you also have to monitor them, not just leave contractors, leave your cabinet members just to run with decisions, but you must be able to backstop, to be able to also check capability, also to be able to understand what are the returns on investment. And of course, when you even have issues to analyze, public policy analysis, and that for me is very fundamental.
Thank you. Then Jeffa?
Yeah, so because of time, I will touch on just 3 issues. And then, so one is frugality in the management of public resources. And then second is monitoring and evaluation. And then third is advocacy. So for management of public resources, one problem we've had in this country is wastefulness. So we need someone that, that possibly understands that, okay, we need to, governance is about saving, beyond the personality traits that Anna has also talked about. But then we also need monitoring and evaluation. So for example, we've seen where budgets are passed and then the leader cannot really account for some of the budget. We have budget padding here and there, and we go back and forth. So we have someone that can really monitor a process and then also evaluate a process, either with a team of experts or on its own. And then we have advocacy skill. This country is made up of it's complex. So we need a leader that can come and say, I mean, for example, when we had the NSAS, we'll say, okay, fine. I think Nigerians, it's okay. I've heard you. Now we are having Naira scarcity. That will come out and say, Nigerian, this is it. And then Nigerians will listen, a commanding leader, and that comes from advocacy. Maybe a lot of people in the civic space have it, but I'm not sure most of the leaders that we have that skill.
Thank you so much. We've had a great panel today looking at the criteria for leadership elections as we approach the elections. I think I'll just end with 3 keywords from what Anne was saying. That first of all, we need, in addition to all the other qualifications, a leader with empathy. Secondly, a leader that's selfless. And thirdly, a leader with integrity. These are keywords for you to consider as you prepare to vote for your new leaders. Thank you, viewers.